So Flins is coming out in about a week now, and I don't really think I've seen a video highlight a lot of the negative things about his kit, besides the fact that he really wants Ineffa, as I do think there are a lot more issues with him currently, despite the fact that at least on paper, yes, his numbers are very good, and in line with the other moderately strong DPS we've been receiving, except for the outliers like Skirk, Movuika, and Varessa. Hello there, Flip here, and today I was going to make a video comparing Flins to Chlorine and Varessa, and ranking who I think the best Electro DPS is, but I decided that before I even get to that, it's going to be important to dedicate a whole video to giving subtext to Flins' kit and his potential jank, so that when I do make that video comparing the Electro DPS, I will be able to actually reference this video to hear my points be further elaborated. And also, just because I have to say it, Flins is a character releasing off the back of a new region, it's very likely that in the future he'll get stronger teammates and become a stronger DPS later on than what I'm about to say now. That still doesn't change the current reality of what I'll be discussing, however, and when he does get better in the future, he'll already be online to get a rerun within this version anyways. So no, Flins isn't a support, so I think him getting better in the future matters less, because he's for sure getting power creeped by the time this version ends anyways, and when he gets stronger he'll have his rerun. And obviously if you like Flins, you should pick him up regardless if he's one of your favorite characters. I just want to get this video out so I can discuss some of Flins' shortcomings more in depth, so people are more aware of what they are getting into, and also again so it'll be easier to talk about Flins in meta discussions in the future. But before we do that, as always, if at any points during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta and I'll try to keep you updated. Shout out to all my lovely channel members. I can't stress enough just how much I appreciate it, and I'm really grateful for your support, so thank you. And also, in the second half, both Flins and Yulon are set to be on banner soon, so if you'd like to cut down on the costs while going for them, then I would like to announce the sponsor for today's video, LD Shop. LD Shop is a very safe and reliable top-up site that allows you to get Primo Gems at a great deal starting from 15% off, while keeping your data safe. As for transactions, you only need to type in your UID and region, as you can see me doing here. Just needed to quickly refresh my welkin, and as you can see, it's here. And to make sure to use my link, as that way you'll receive an extra 15% off coupon, as well as a 5% off coupon which can save you up to $50. LD Shop goes through official channels as well, meaning that you won't lose any of the in-game benefits like first-time top-up bonuses, so no need to worry. And additionally, because LD Shop is so great, users who spend over $80 will receive a VIP membership which rewards you with free welcome moons. So head over to ldshop.gg using my link in the description below. What are you waiting for? Thanks to LD Shop for sponsoring this video, now back to it. So to start, I'm just going to go over Flint's kit briefly while adding in some notes about his kit. For his elemental skill, Flint will enter a special stance for 10 seconds that does two things. The first is giving an electro infusion on his normal attacks, in which the normal attack hits don't really do that much damage. They're mostly there for electro application to get continuous lunar charge procs, and they're also there to generate energy for him. Unlike most of the characters in 5.x that generate front-loaded particles, Flint will generate a particle every 2 seconds when he does a normal attack in his skill state. This means you can technically get 6 particles, but you aren't him, you're not attacking on sync every 2 seconds, so realistically it's 5. The second thing using his skill does is that it will enable a special elemental skill on a 6-second cooldown that does AoE electro damage, which again isn't really that important, but casting the special skill enables Flint to do a special elemental burst. That is just an AoE nuke of direct lunar charge damage that consumes 30 of Flint's energy instead of the full 80, and this is where over 80% of his damage comes from. Flint is able to do 2 of these special bursts per rotation, and then you stall with the rest of his field time by doing normal attacks. For reaction lunar charge procs, Flint does also have a default elemental burst that costs 80 energy, but it just still isn't worth using. Doing 2 special elemental bursts on Flint is not only just more damage over your rotation, but it also consumes 60 energy, where using the default burst consumes all 80 of your energy. If you have a weapon that has an energy refunding effect like Flint's signature weapon, Favonius Lance, or Ketane, then you can opt to use the default burst like every other rotation, but it's still just worse than using Flint normally, and being able to run a better weapon like the Craftable being the better weapon referring to Ketane and Favonius, not his signature obviously. And if you miss a particle in any of your other units, you have a chance to brick your rotations if you don't have enough energy, so I just think it's never worth doing the big burst personally. Regarding his passives, they're all pretty good self buffs that make building him much easier, especially his EM passive that scales with attack. Now with his kit covered, let's get into some of the problems I have with him. The first is that he's kind of just okay. Theoretically, his damage is on par with the other tier 1 Natlin carries, sitting around the 105k DPS range, which is fine, like that's good. I'm not gonna be like, Flins doesn't do Movuika levels of damage, therefore bad. It's just that Flins does this level of damage while requiring you to pull for Ineffa, and he doesn't really offer anything that special in return. Ineffa herself already enables the lunar charge reaction, while having 100% uptime with her electro uptime, and then if you look at something like the Ineffa Ino core, it is already one of the strongest duos in the game, working with most Onimo, Hydro, Electro, and Pyro carries. And with units like Chlorine, Varessa, or Nuvolette that do a lot of talent damage, they can also sub in characters like Furina and Yulon to get very good performance with Ineffa too. And not only do most of these characters have good teams with Ineffa, but they also have amazing teams without Ineffa as well. So what is Flynn's bringing that these characters don't already do without these restrictions? I do think it's reasonable to argue the Nordcry meta. There's going to be a lot of lunar reactions chilling, and sure, but once again, Ineffa is already able to be that lunar charge reaction check, and not only that, but for lunar charge / electro charge bosses that have been released, funnily enough, the best ways to clear them have just been by brute forcing with the strongest teams in the game. Mualani was one of the best ways to check the cactus even on Dire, and Varessa is able to brute force the boss with their overload teams even without Malvuika, and Varessa's Malvuika-less overload teams are about equal to Flynn's best teams currently with Ineffa. So if the shield mechanics aren't really that punishing, once again, what is the special thing that Flynn does that makes him more worthwhile than the other DPS that we have that have synergy with or without Ineffa? I'm just gonna say this again because I feel like people aren't going to understand my point, but I'm well aware that Flynn's most likely will get stronger in the future. But as I said at the beginning of the video, that is a better argument for pulling him on the rerun when he's more complete than pulling him right now. Another thing to reiterate is that with this video, I'm not trying to get you to not pull for Flynns. If you like him, that is more than reason enough. I just want to open up more of a discussion about this. Also, if you're this far into this video, you like it, right? You're not just watching this video for effect, so if you haven't subscribed already, make sure to do so. And tapping that bell would also be helpful. Liking the video and sharing would also be appreciated, and if you want to see my calculations early, then go over to my Twitter where I post them. I've had a lot of my calculations ready for weeks, but I didn't make a video, so if you want to be updated the quickest whenever I make a calculation, you can go to my Twitter. Now back to the video, in which the next thing I want to go over is going to be his Ineffa reliance. As I feel like even more so than Skirk, Flynn is tied to the hip to Ineffa currently to an unhealthy degree, and as I said prior, I don't think he justifies his Ineffa reliance currently. Skirk with his Gothia is the second best, if not arguably the best DPS in the game right now, if you can execute some of her better combos, and is a big leap over someone like Ayaka both theoretically and practically. And Skirk without a Gothia is still on par with someone like Ayaka with a Gothia, which is a level of dominance Flynn's doesn't really have. So the phase teams are standardly built with another Electro unit to help him with energy needs, a Hydra unit to enable lunar charge reaction, in which the best options currently are Ino or no burst Furina, and then your last slot is a flexible slot, but you're best off running an Onimo unit with Viridescent for the resistance shred, and the fact that they're able to apply VV without needing to use a skill or burst to allow them to fit comfortably in Flynn's rotations, in which Sucrose applies Viridescent on top of strong elemental mastery buffs, making her the best in this role. Now to go over why not having Ineffa is such a big hit, the Electro roster for supports in the new Nordcry meta isn't really that stellar, and compared to Ineffa, no one is really able to do what she does. Ineffa does the highest off-field DPS in the game currently. On top of that, she gives a 14 base multiplier to Flynn's lunar charge damage, which is a free 10% DPS boost to him, and she also is able to give him EM via her elemental burst for buffing as well. And her turret-based particle generation is also really nice for Flynn's, as it means that he can catch her particles over time, instead of all of them going to her, for example. And no other Electro unit can offer anything to this degree, yet Flynn's needs to run a second Electro, otherwise his energy requirements suffer a lot. Looking at Ineffa-less Flynn's teams, with what we know currently, his best Electro is going to be with a C6 Auroron. Auroron is able to aid him with his energy needs via his A1. Auroron also does decent sub DPS damage and is able to give him a 30% attack buff with C6. If you don't have a C6 Auroron, Fischl and Auroron should be about equal, but everything is so mid to where it doesn't really matter what Electro you use as long as they do something. And then outside of the Electro teammate, one thing I didn't even mention is the fact that Ineffa is a Nordcry character and therefore boosts your moon sign level, which allows Flynns to gain extra buffs and utilize the Nordcry set more effectively. If you don't have Ineffa, this means you're locked into using Ino, which honestly isn't a bad thing, as Ino is Flynn's best Hydro anyways at C6, but this does cause an issue with Flynns' last teammate, because for one, Ineffa is a sustain and you have to run Ino, so your two choices are either running an electric healer or running an Onimo healer or shielder, in which case your options are what Jean, Kuki, Lanyan, and Xianyan, and to narrow things down, your best choice is using Lanyan so you can use Auroron, in which case Flynns' performance is like this amount of damage will struggle to clear the Futui agent even though lunar charge is being chilled, unless you get things like Flynn's signature weapon or constellations that are 30% damage increase. I just don't really like how much value Ineffa gives to Flynns being his best sustain, best support, and best sub DPS for him. And the thing that sucks the most is that in a Skirka Skofia situation or Malvuika Lolly situation, you pull for them and get one of the strongest teams in the game, whereas Flynns is just like, he's just fine. And then without Ineffa, he's worse than most of the Natlan cast even with their B tier teams. teams. And also one more thing that Ineffa does for Flins is aiding in his damage distributions, which is another issue I have with him, which is the fact that I think the way he deals damage is kind of janky and feels like a regression from most of the kits we've seen in 5.x. And then with Ineffa in the next patch, she pretty much just solves some of the issues I have with Flins' damage distributions. I really just don't think his damage being burst locked is good game design at all. Once again, 80% of his damage in rotation is his direct lunar charge hits, which is just a special burst. And then the next biggest majority of Flins' damage is lunar charge reaction damage. This means that both his normal attacks and skill hits contribute such a low amount of damage to your overall rotation that if you just use Flins' 2 special bursts, just doing that is almost close to reaching his theoretical max damage output. And that is both a good thing and a bad thing. The good is that Flins is going to be really easy to play. The bad is that he has no real skill expression and his damage distributions being like this can be awkward in some forms of content. To address the first point about skill expression, looking at Malvika for starters, over her beta and even now, people are still finding new combos for her that just make her better and better without requiring you to pull for anything vertically on her. In beta, people were doing just 8 charge attacks on Malvika, and that was assumed to be her best combo. Then after playtesting her, her best reactionless combo was spamming C2D, then it was N1CD, and I don't even think I can read this correctly, but now it should be what the fuck? How? What? CD, CD, CCFD, CD, CCFD, CD, CCF. Yeah, man. But it just made Malvika 15% stronger for free via just learning a combo. Kanish also gets 15 to 20% stronger going from 4 cannons to 5 cannons. And hell, even if we go further back, looking at Yoimiya, there's nothing for her to do past spamming N5s. There's no way to make her performance any better, but with Hu Tao learning how to do cancels properly, it just allowed people to gain more mileage out of her. Skirk and Varessa too were also undercalculated in pre-release, and people found better ways to optimize their combos. With Flins though, this can't really be the case as you can't get any more direct lunar charge hits no matter what you do, and whatever normal attack combo you do doesn't really matter, as it's just such a low amount of his damage. It's kind of a similar problem I have with Chlorinde, where you can't really make her do any more damage than she does normally, as the optimal amount of hits for her is pretty much set in stone. I was about to go on to talk more about damage distributions and how Flins' playstyle being 2 nukes, one of which has a 6-second space in between them, is kind of bad, but then I realized that this is only really an Ineffa-less problem, as Ineffa thankfully does enough damage from all fields to be able to sustain the overall team's damage, even when Flins isn't doing anything, while waiting for a special burst to go off CD. A problem with Nuke DPS characters that just don't really do anything for a long period of time like Muulani is the fact that if that is your character's playstyle, then you have to reach the damage breakpoints to be one-shotting mobs or elite enemies, unless they feel very awkward to play. For example, in multi-wave content, let's say there's 3 enemies in one wave, and you need to do 40 damage to all of them for them to die, and Muulani has a total of 90 damage in rotation. If Muulani's first bite does 30 damage to all those enemies, they'll still be alive, so it'll take a second bite to finish them off. And now, even though those enemies only needed 40 damage to die, you've now wasted 60 of your total damage. And then let's say another wave spawns in that also needs 40 damage to die. Well, now you only have 30 damage left, and won't be able to kill them in that rotation, which is why damage distributions are important. And in my opinion, I think Varessa has the most perfect damage distributions in the game, with how fast she mixes in her weak, medium, and strong plunges, and you can even skip her burst plunge to save energy if needed. And her normal attacks, skill, and charge attacks, at least on Chevy teams, do a decent amount of damage too. So it feels like such a regression to me to go from that to Flins, that only really has 2 notable hits in rotation, and the fact that it's tied to energy as well, where Varessa can honestly just skip her burst and do another skill plunge and it isn't that bad, but if Flins misses a burst, that is literally half his damage gone. Like, Flins is unironically a way up victim, but again, this is only really an Ineffa-less issue, as Ineffa's sub DPS is good enough to where this isn't a big deal, but again, just something to keep in mind. I'll probably touch more on this too in the Electro comparison, but one thing Flins has going for him is the fact that all his vertical investment is broken, and is some of the strongest in the game, while fixing his issues. His signature helps with energy, his C1 adds an extra hit to him which makes his distributions better, and these are both 30% increases to him that you'll really feel and I can recommend going for if you want your Flins to feel amazing, and his vertical investment is much better than the other Electro carries currently. But with that, I think I've yapped enough. To summarize, despite all the issues I have with Flins, he's still going to be fine as a DPS, and competitive with the other tier 1 carries, and in the Abyss with the lunar buffs, he should still be a very high tier option there as well. However, this doesn't really change the fact that Flins doesn't really do anything that special, as well as the fact that his Ineffa reliance is some of the worst shilling in the game, and his current team building is kind of cringe, but I do expect that to get better later. And as we just touched on, he has very little skill expression in his kit due to the fact that his damage is tied to 2 burst hits, and with his Nuke playstyle it could be very awkward in practice. Alas, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe and comment your thoughts on Flins, as I'd love to hear it and respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, I love you all, your support means the world to me and I wish the best for you. Hugs and kisses. Thanks again to everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.